Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another video. This time I'm going to be doing a book review and it's on The Prime Ministers by Iain Dale. It's a very timely book review actually because this video will be coming out on Monday the 5th of April and the Saturday just before, the 3rd of April, was the 300th anniversary since Sir Robert Walpole effectively became Prime Minister, the first Prime Minister of Great Britain. And I say it effectively because it wasn't until 1905 that the term Prime Minister was given clear formal recognition. It had been used beforehand, initially in a negative sense, but it wasn't really given that formal recognition until about 1905. But Sir Robert Walpole is widely regarded as effectively the first British Prime Minister. The title is really known as the First Lord of the Treasury. I'm going to be reviewing this book and just talking about my thoughts of it. Obviously, I'm not going to give anything away because, I definitely recommend this book to anyone who might be interested in reading it. What's the book about? Well, as the title might indicate, it's about prime ministers. And it's about the 55 leaders that we've had in over 300 years of history. So all the way back from Sir Robert Walpole to the present day, Boris Johnson. And each chapter or each essay is written by a key figure in British politics. That might be an academic, it might be a journalist, or even a politician. And through each section, you get to read about the Prime Minister. You get to read about what they did, their experiences, who they are, their background, what they did as Prime Minister. And the way it's structured into those individual essays on each of the leaders, it makes, first of all, the book very accessible because, you can read 2 chapters, so to speak, and then take a day off and then come back to it. You don't have to read it all at once. You could just say, what I did is I did a Prime Minister a day. So I would say, right, okay, I'm on to Margaret Thatcher today, so I'll read that one. And then tomorrow morning, when I'm having my cup of tea, I'll read, Sir John Major. I'll read the section on Sir John Major. So it's nicely structured and it's very accessible in that sense, but also it's just interesting to see the different writing styles. It's interesting to see the different analysis that's given by each of the writers for each of the prime ministers, and to see their views, because they give their opinions on the prime ministers and they give their views on what they did well, what people would remember them for, their legacy, and it's very interesting. And as I said, the book, each obviously of the prime ministers, you look at their background, you learn about what they did before they became Prime Minister. You learn about what they did as Prime Minister. You learn about some of the challenges that they had to face, the crises that they had to deal with, the kind of people they had in their cabinet and in their team. But also you learn about their downfall and how some of them, left in better shape than others. It gives you a lot to think about in terms of what that Prime Minister did, but also gives you an opportunity to think about what makes a good Prime Minister. Is it about luck? Is it about the team that you have around you? Is it about the skills that you've got? Is it about your background? Is it about the experiences that you have? Is it about your ability to connect with the public? Or is it, about a multitude of different factors? But also, does what is needed of a Prime Minister depend on the times? So, back in the days of Sir Robert Walpole or someone like Lord North, the television wasn't around, the radio wasn't around, so they didn't have to deal with those. But by the time you got to the 20th century, someone like Margaret Thatcher or Sir John Major had to deal with obviously this, technology of the television and the radio. Going to the more present day, someone like Theresa May or Boris Johnson also needs to deal with social media and being able to engage with the public through the use of social media. So you have to see, you learn about, obviously, you see the passage of time as you read each essay for each Prime Minister, and you see obviously how they have to address these new challenges, these new technological developments, social developments, political developments, global developments, and you learn obviously how society has changed over the years as well. You also, the book is really good because you learn about a whole range of prime ministers, a whole range of different people. And obviously we might all be familiar with people like Boris Johnson or Theresa May, but are we as familiar with someone like Lord North or Lord Liverpool, or even someone as recent as Clement Attlee? This book allows you to learn about prime ministers also you might have never heard of, and you learn about what they did, and you learn about their tenure as Prime Minister. It gives you a bit of insight into Prime Ministers you do know more about. You might have a lot of knowledge about Margaret Thatcher, but this book might give you a little bit more insight into her politics, into her thinking, into how she acted as Prime Minister, the kind of things that she brought in as Prime Minister. So it gives you a lot to think about, and it gives you a lot of insight. Obviously, this is only just one book, and it's obviously the essays are kind of almost a summary of what they did and who they are. And obviously it'd be for you to go away and do some more research about these individuals. But it gives you a bit of a glimpse into the Prime Ministers and the people and who they worked with and what they did as Prime Minister. The other thing I touched upon just earlier was that you get to kind of see how society has changed over the past 300 years. You get to see how British politics have changed over the past 300 years. Centuries ago, before we had the office of Prime Minister, obviously the monarchy was a key figure and led the country. Obviously their role, diminished as the centuries went by. And that eventually led to more, obviously, parliamentary democracy, the office of Prime Minister, etc. And so you get to see, obviously, how the politics change. You get to see, obviously, how Prime Ministers had to deal with the expansion of democracy and through increase of the number of people who could actually vote, so representation for women and the working class, for example. At the time of Sir Robert Walpole, there was no such thing as the Labour Party. The Labour Party didn't exist until the 20th century. So you see, obviously, the fall of old political parties and the rise of new political parties. And you learn about, obviously, history, as I said, some of the things that happened over the course of the 18th, 19th, 20th and 21st century. All the different crises, the wars, the pandemic, in the case of, say, Prime Minister Johnson, that had to be dealt with. So you get a bit of a glimpse of, if you're someone who's interested in history, even if you're not necessarily interested in politics, if you're interested in history, this book gives you a little bit of insight into that. Obviously, this book is just a summary, but it just gives you a bit of an idea of the times that each of these prime ministers were living in and the circumstances that they had to deal with, and as I said before, the crises and the problems that they had to address. So it's a really good book if you are interested in politics, like I am. It's a really good book if you're interested in history. It's a really good book if you just want something nice to read, something that's quite accessible, and something that gives you a bit of summary of leaders that you never thought of, or leaders that you thought you knew a lot of, but actually gives you a bit more information about them than you realised beforehand. It gives you both sides of them, where they did well as Prime Minister, their achievements, but also where they fell short and where, why history might look back on them in a maybe a bit more negative light or a bit more of a positive light. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who is interested. And it's a bit, like I said, it just gives you a bit of insight into 55 leaders over 300 years of history by 55 different authors. I enjoyed reading this. I enjoyed learning about the prime ministers. I enjoyed it was just a very interesting book. So I would definitely recommend it. And with that comes the end of this relatively short review of The Prime Ministers by Iain Dale. If you're interested in the book, I'll put a link in the description below. You can check out the book for yourself. Definitely recommend it. If you've enjoyed this video, or at the very least it was something to listen to, do the usual things like liking the video, follow me on all the social media, which is in the description below. Subscribe to the channel. Remember, we're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't already, why haven't you? Make sure you subscribe, but hit that notification bell to keep up to date as well. And I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.